Welcome to HFY Stories. If you're ready for jaw-dropping stories and a universe full of excitement, hit that subscribe button like it's the big red button in a space opera. Give us a like if you're feeling that interstellar vibe and comment below to join the conversation. We want to hear from you. Yes, you, the spacefarer with a great story idea, or just a fan of epic human victories. The arrival of the frontier. The galaxy was a vast and terrifying place, filled with civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humans had even learned to walk upright. The Galactic Union, a coalition of the most advanced species, governed the known universe with an iron hand, ensuring that no species ever gained too much power or disrupted the fragile balance that kept the peace. For centuries, they had watched over the galaxy, confident in their supremacy. Then, one day, a new signal was detected at the edge of known space. It was small, insignificant at first, barely a blip on the Union's sensors. But as the signal grew stronger, curiosity turned to concern. The signal was not like anything they had encountered before. It was too structured, too deliberate, as if someone, or something, was trying to make contact. The Union's High Council convened, a rare occurrence that signaled the seriousness of the situation. The room was filled with representatives from a dozen different species, each more anxious than the last. At the head of the table sat Councillor Drivak, an ancient being with eyes that had seen millennia pass by. He spoke in a voice that commanded silence. "We must investigate this signal," Drivak declared, his tone brokering no argument. "We cannot allow an unknown force to enter our domain without understanding its intentions." The council agreed, and a scout ship, the Vigilant, was dispatched to the signal's origin. It took weeks to traverse the light years to the source, each moment filled with tension as the crew speculated about what they might find. The captain, a veteran of countless missions, tried to keep his crew calm, but even he could not hide his apprehension. Finally, they arrived at the coordinates. What they saw left them speechless. It was a ship, unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek, dark, and radiating power, it floated silently in space. There were no visible weapons, no markings, nothing to indicate its origin. The only clue was a single message, broadcasted on all frequencies. "This is the frontier," the message began, in perfect galactic standard. "We come in peace. We seek only knowledge and trade." The crew of the Vigilant hesitated. The ship was too perfect, too advanced for any known species. It was as if it had been designed to defy the laws of physics themselves. The captain ordered a full scan, but the frontier's hull deflected all attempts to penetrate its secrets. As the crew debated their next move, the frontier sent out a second message. This one was different. It was directed at the Vigilant specifically. "Come aboard," the voice said. "We mean you no harm. We only wish to talk." The captain considered his options. He could turn back, report to the High Council, and let them decide the next steps. But something about the ship called to him. It was a challenge, a mystery that begged to be solved. "We're going in," the captain finally ordered, to the shock of his crew. "Prepare the shuttle." As they approached the frontier, the shuttle's sensors went wild. The ship's technology was far beyond anything the Union had ever encountered. It was as if the frontier existed in a different dimension altogether. The shuttle docked, and the crew held their breath as the airlock hissed open. They stepped into the ship, expecting an alien environment. Instead, they were greeted by a familiar sight. An airlock designed with precision and care, clearly built by beings with an understanding of human ergonomics. A figure awaited them, standing in the shadows. It stepped forward, revealing itself to be humanoid, but not quite human. Its features were sharper, more refined, and its eyes glowed with a faint light. "Welcome aboard the frontier," the figure said. "I am Captain Lyra, of the United Earth Fleet." The crew exchanged glances. United Earth Fleet. There was no such fleet in the Union's records. Earth was a backwater planet, barely capable of space travel. This couldn't be right. We have much to discuss, Lyra continued, as if reading their thoughts. But first, allow me to offer you a gift, a token of our peaceful intentions. She gestured, and the walls of the airlock shimmered, revealing a massive hangar filled with alien artifacts, technology, and resources beyond imagination. The crew was awestruck. "We seek only knowledge and trade," Lyra repeated. "But we understand if you are hesitant. Take this gift as a sign of our goodwill." The captain of the Vigilant felt a mix of excitement and dread. The implications of this encounter were staggering. He knew he had to report back to the High Council, but he also knew that this was only the beginning. As the crew of the Vigilant explored the frontier, they found themselves drawn into a web of intrigue that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. The ship was a paradox, a beacon of hope and a harbinger of change. The High Council's dilemma. News of the frontier spread like wildfire through the Galactic Union. The High Council, normally a bastion of calm deliberation, was thrown into chaos. The implications of a new and powerful player in the galaxy were too great to ignore. The Union had maintained peace for centuries by ensuring that no single species could dominate the others. But the frontier represented a threat to that balance. Councillor Drivak, the eldest and most respected member, called for an emergency session. The council chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from all corners of the galaxy gathered to discuss the situation. "The arrival of the frontier is unprecedented," Drivak began, his voice grave. "We have no records of such a ship, and its technology far surpasses anything we possess. We must decide how to proceed with caution." The representatives were divided. Some advocated for immediate military action, fearing that the ship could be the vanguard of an invasion force. Others called for diplomacy, pointing out that the frontier had shown no signs of hostility. "We cannot afford to be reckless," said Councillor Thrix, a reptilian being from the warlike Qatar Empire. "But neither can we afford to ignore this potential threat. We should send a fleet to investigate and, if necessary, neutralize the frontier." Councillor Serafina, representing the peaceful Urians, shook her head. "Violence should be our last resort. The frontier has made contact and offered gifts. We should at least hear them out before resorting to force." The debate raged on, but Drivak remained silent, his ancient mind considering the possibilities. The Union had faced many challenges over the millennia, but this was different. The frontier was not just a ship. It was a symbol of something greater, a power that could either uplift or destroy the galaxy as they knew it. After hours of heated discussion, Drivak finally spoke. "We will send an envoy to meet with the frontier," he declared. "A small delegation, representing the Union, will negotiate on our behalf. We will approach with caution, but we will not be the first to strike." The council reluctantly agreed, and preparations began. The delegation would consist of representatives from the Union's most powerful species, each chosen for their diplomacy and wisdom. At the head of the delegation was Councillor Serafina, whose gentle demeanor and sharp intellect made her the perfect choice for the task. As the delegation prepared to depart, whispers of conspiracy and betrayal spread through the ranks. Some believed that the frontier was a Trojan horse sent to sow discord within the Union. Others feared that the delegation would be walking into a trap, never to return. But Serafina was resolute. She knew that this mission was too important to abandon. The fate of the galaxy could very well depend on the outcome of these negotiations. The delegation's ship, the Diplomat, set out for the coordinates provided by the frontier. The journey was tense, with every crew member on edge, anticipating the unknown. Serafina spent the time reviewing the information provided by the crew of the Vigilant. The more she learned, the more intrigued she became. The frontier was a mystery, but one thing was clear. It was not of the Galactic Union. Its design, its technology, even its captain were all anomalies. Yet, there was something familiar about it, something that hinted at a deeper connection. Finally, the Diplomat arrived at its destination. The frontier loomed before them, its dark hull shimmering with energy. As the diplomat approached, the frontier sent a signal, opening a communication channel. "Welcome, Counselor Serafina," Captain Lyra's voice echoed through the ship. "We are honored by your presence. Please, come aboard." The airlock opened and Serafina, accompanied by her delegation, stepped onto the frontier. The atmosphere was tense, with both sides sizing each other up. But Lyra greeted them with a warm smile, her demeanor calm and confident. "Thank you for coming," Lyra said. "We have much to discuss." The meeting began with Serafina and Lyra exchanging pleasantries and discussing their respective cultures. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear that Lyra had an agenda. She spoke of unity, of the potential for cooperation between the frontier and the Union. But she also hinted at something more, something that made Serafina uneasy. "What is your true purpose here?" Serafina finally asked, her voice steady. "You speak of peace, but your ship is a weapon in itself. What do you seek?" Lyra's expression softened, and she leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Serafina's. "We seek to change the galaxy," she said, her voice low and earnest. "We believe that the Union's way of ruling is outdated. It has brought peace, yes, but at the cost of stagnation. We want to bring about a new era, one of progress, of freedom." Serafina felt a chill run down her spine. The frontier was not just a ship, it was a catalyst for revolution. The implications were staggering. If the Union were to fall, the galaxy would be thrown into chaos. But if Lyra's vision were realized, it could mean a brighter future for all. "You're asking us to betray everything we've built," Serafina said, her voice wavering. "I'm asking you to help us build something better," Lyra replied, her gaze unwavering. The choice was clear, but it was not an easy one. Serafina knew that whatever decision she made would shape the future of the galaxy. But deep down, she also knew that the frontier had already set events in motion that could not be stopped. As the meeting concluded, Serafina and her delegation returned to the diplomat, their minds heavy with the weight of their responsibility. The frontier had offered them a path, but it was up to them to decide whether to take it. And as they left the frontier behind, Serafina couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. A rift in the Union. The High Council was divided. Upon receiving Serafina's report, the members were thrust into a fierce debate, one that threatened to tear the Union apart. The frontier's message was clear. The galaxy needed change. But what kind of change, and at what cost, was still uncertain. Councillor Thrix was among the first to voice his concerns. "This is a trap," he roared, his scaled fists slamming against the table. "The frontier seeks to destabilize us, to sow discord among our people. We cannot allow ourselves to be swayed by their lies." Others, however, saw potential in Lyra's vision. "The Union has grown stagnant," argued Councillor Varian, an elder from the scholar-priest race of the Thrallan. "We have ruled with stability, but at the expense of innovation and progress. The frontier offers a chance to revitalize our civilizations, to move forward into a new era." The chamber echoed with voices, some filled with fear, others with hope. Councillor Drivak, who had remained silent throughout the debate, finally stood, his presence commanding the attention of the room. "We must not act rashly," Drivak said, his voice calm but firm. "The frontier represents both a threat and an opportunity. We cannot ignore the potential dangers, but neither can we dismiss the possibility of a brighter future." The council was at an impasse. They needed more time, more information, but time was a luxury they did not have. The frontier had already begun making contact with other species, offering them the same gifts and promises that had been presented to the Union. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. New technologies, resources, and alliances were being formed, all under the banner of the frontier. As the council deliberated, tensions within the Union began to rise. Some member species, particularly those who had long felt marginalized or oppressed, saw the frontier as a beacon of hope, a chance to break free from the Union's control. Others, more invested in the status quo, viewed the frontier as a dangerous insurgent that threatened the fragile peace. It wasn't long before protests and skirmishes broke out on member worlds. The Union's once unified front was cracking, and whispers of civil war began to spread. The High Council, once a symbol of stability, now seemed powerless to stop the growing unrest. Amid the chaos, Seraphina found herself torn. She had always believed in the Union's ideals, but her encounter with Lyra had shaken her convictions. The frontier had shown her a vision of the future, one where the galaxy was not ruled by fear and control, but by cooperation and mutual growth. But she also knew that such a future would come at a cost. In the midst of the turmoil, a secret message arrived for Seraphina. It was from Lyra, sent directly to her private communication line. The message was simple, but its implications were profound. "We need to meet," the message read. "There is something you must see." Seraphina hesitated, knowing that accepting the invitation could be seen as an act of treason. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had to know the truth. The Union was on the brink of collapse, and the only way to save it, or to guide it into a new era, was to understand the frontier's true intentions. She made her decision. Under the cover of night, Seraphina left her quarters and boarded a small, unmarked ship. Her destination was a neutral system, one that had remained outside the Union's influence. It was here that she would meet with Lyra, away from the prying eyes of the Council. The journey was long and tense, with every passing hour filled with doubts and fears. But Seraphina pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for the galaxy. When she arrived at the rendezvous point, she was met by a single ship, the Frontier, as sleek and imposing as ever. As she docked, she was greeted by Lyra, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming," Lyra said, her tone formal. "I know this wasn't an easy decision for you." Seraphina nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She followed Lyra through the ship, noting the subtle changes since her last visit. The Frontier felt more alive, as if it had grown in power and purpose. They arrived at a viewing deck, a vast window offering a breathtaking view of the stars. But it wasn't the stars that caught Seraphina's attention. It was the fleet. Hundreds of ships, each different in design and origin, were gathered around the Frontier, forming an armada that stretched as far as the eye could see. "These are the worlds that have chosen to join us," Lyra explained, her voice filled with quiet pride. "They see the future, Seraphina. A future where we are not bound by the past, but free to create something new." Seraphina stared at the fleet, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. The Frontier had succeeded in doing what the Union had always feared, uniting the galaxy, but under a new banner. "This isn't just about the Union, is it?" Seraphina asked, finally breaking her silence. "You're building an empire." Lyra turned to her, her eyes filled with resolve. "No," she said softly. "We're building a legacy." Seraphina knew then that the time for hesitation was over. The galaxy was changing, and she had to decide which side of history she wanted to be on. The battle for the future. The Union was on the brink of collapse. The Frontier's message had spread like wildfire, igniting both hope and fear across the galaxy. Civil unrest had turned into open rebellion, and the once unified Galactic Union was now fractured into factions, each vying for control. The High Council, desperate to maintain order, declared a state of emergency. Martial law was imposed on member worlds, and the Union's fleet was mobilized to quell the uprisings. But it was too little too late. The Frontier had already gained the support of dozens of species, and their combined forces now posed a formidable threat to the Union's dominance. In the midst of the chaos, Seraphina returned to the High Council, her mind racing with the implications of what she had seen. The Frontier was not just a ship, it was the catalyst for a new order, one that could either save the galaxy or plunge it into endless war. The Council was in disarray when she arrived. Councillor Thrix was calling for a full-scale assault on the frontier, while Councillor Varian urged caution, arguing that such an action would only drive more species into the frontier's arms. "We must act now," Thrix bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The frontier is building an empire, and if we do not stop them, they will destroy everything we have built." Varian countered, his voice measured but firm. "If we attack, we will only confirm their worst fears. We must find a way to negotiate, to bring them back into the fold." Seraphina knew that the time for negotiation had passed. The frontier was too powerful, too determined to be swayed by diplomacy. But she also knew that an all-out war would devastate the galaxy. There had to be another way. As the debate raged on, Seraphina's mind drifted back to her meeting with Lyra. The frontier's fleet had been vast, but it was not invincible. If the Union could find a way to neutralize the frontier without resorting to open conflict, they might still be able to save the galaxy from destruction. But such a plan would require precision, secrecy, and a willingness to take risks that the Council had never before considered. It would also require allies, those who believed in the Union's cause but were willing to fight in unconventional ways. Seraphina took a deep breath and stood, commanding the attention of the chamber. "There is a way," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "But it will not be easy, and it will require sacrifices." All eyes turned to her, the weight of their expectations pressing down on her shoulders. She outlined her plan, a daring strategy that involved infiltrating the frontier's fleet and disabling their most advanced technologies. It was a risky move, one that could either turn the tide in the Union's favor or doom them all. Thrix was the first to object. "This is madness. You're talking about sending our people into the heart of the enemy's territory." "It's our only chance," Seraphina replied, her voice resolute. "If we attack head-on, we will lose. But if we can cripple the frontier from within, we may still have a chance." The Council was silent, each member weighing the risks and the potential rewards. Finally, Drivak spoke, his tone somber but determined. "We have no other choice. The Union is at stake, and we must do whatever it takes to preserve it." The decision was made. A small team of elite operatives, handpicked by Seraphina herself, would be sent to infiltrate the frontier's fleet. Their mission was to disable the frontier's advanced weaponry and communication systems, creating an opening for the Union's fleet to strike. The preparations were swift, and soon, Seraphina found herself aboard a stealth vessel, leading the team on what could be their final mission. As they approached the frontier's fleet, the tension was palpable, each member of the team acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. The infiltration went smoother than expected, thanks in part to the element of surprise. The frontier's forces had grown complacent, confident in their superiority. But as the team moved deeper into the heart of the fleet, the true scale of their task became clear. The frontier was not just a ship, it was a living entity, its systems intertwined in ways that defied conventional logic. Every step brought new challenges, new threats, but Seraphina pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the future of the galaxy depended on their success. Finally, they reached the core of the frontier, the nexus where all its systems converged. It was here that they would plant the devices that would disrupt the frontier's power, rendering it vulnerable to the Union's attack. But as they worked, an alarm sounded, and Seraphina knew their time was running out. The frontier's defenses were closing in, and the window of opportunity was rapidly shrinking. With a final push, the devices were activated, sending a shockwave through the frontier's systems. The once mighty ship shuddered, its lights flickering as its power waned. "Now," Seraphina ordered, her voice filled with urgency. The team retreated, racing back to their vessel as the frontier began to collapse from within. But as they reached the hangar, they were met by a familiar face. Lyra, her expression a mix of anger and sorrow. "You've doomed us all," Lyra said, her voice shaking with emotion. Serafina met her gaze, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. "I did what I had to do," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Lyra nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Then we both lose." With that, the hangar doors sealed shut, trapping the team inside the dying ship. Serafina realized too late that their mission had been a trap, one designed to ensure that neither the Frontier nor the Union would emerge victorious. As the ship began to tear itself apart, Serafina closed her eyes, knowing that the future they had all fought for would never come to pass. The legacy of the Frontier. In the aftermath of the Frontier's destruction, the galaxy was left in ruins. The Union had survived, but just barely. The Frontier's death throes had unleashed a wave of destruction that had crippled both fleets, leaving countless worlds vulnerable to the chaos that followed. The High Council, once a symbol of unity, was now a fractured body, its members struggling to maintain control over a galaxy that had lost its faith in their leadership. The Union was no longer the beacon of hope it had once been. Instead, it was a shadow of its former self, haunted by the ghosts of those who had died in the conflict. Among the wreckage, Serafina's name became a symbol of both heroism and tragedy. She was remembered as the one who had led the charge to save the Union, but also as the one who had sacrificed everything in the process. Her actions had saved the galaxy from the Frontier's domination, but they had also plunged it into a new era of uncertainty and fear. In the years that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. New alliances were formed, new leaders rose to power, and the scars of the war slowly began to heal. But the legacy of the Frontier lived on, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the cost of fighting for a better future. For some, the Frontier was a cautionary tale, a warning of what happens when power is allowed to corrupt, when ideals are sacrificed for the sake of control. For others, it was a symbol of hope, a testament to the idea that change, though painful, was necessary for progress. As the galaxy moved forward, the memory of the Frontier and its crew became a part of its history, a history that was written by the survivors, the ones who had lived through the conflict and emerged on the other side. And in the end, it was not the Frontier itself that shaped the future, but the choices of those who had fought for it, against it, and for something greater than themselves. This story blends action, suspense, romance, and the complexities of leadership, capturing the essence of a galaxy in turmoil and the individuals who shape its destiny. SUBSCRIB for more HFY stories.